Well, once again, good morning and welcome to Crossroads Christian Fellowship. So, today we're going to talk about something that is extremely important, but it's also something that a lot of people don't like to talk about. And the reason we don't like to talk about it is because people more like to argue about it instead of talking about it. And people have a problem sometimes getting into the biblical perspective because we're all so focused on our own lives and our own world that sometimes we have a difficult time seeing the other perspective. That perspective of what Jesus has and what Jesus would have us have as his followers. The other thing is that oftentimes when we talk about controversial subjects or sensitive subjects, sometimes people feel convicted. And often in our church today, we don't like to be convicted because we have our mind set on a certain way of doing things, and that's the way that we think it should be all the time. The reading for today is from Matthew 25:31-45. It says, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates his sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?' The king will reply, 'Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.' Then he will say to those on his left, 'Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me.' They also will answer, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you?' And he will reply, 'Truly, I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me.'" These are the words of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Now, one of the things we have to remember, which is absolutely clear to anybody who's paying attention, is that we are very, very blessed, especially those of us who are living in the United States. Even those people who are below what is considered to be the poverty line in the United States have much more than most people in the rest of the world. One of the phrases that I often like to say when I hear somebody complain about something, and especially when I'm complaining about something to remind myself, is that is a first world problem. In fact, I believe I said that to somebody in this room just this past week during your conversation. In other words, most of the time when we're complaining about something going on in our lives, it's something that people in third world countries would love to be able to complain about. But it's not something they ever have to worry about because they don't have the same things that we do. For example, when you leave your home in the morning and your car doesn't start because the battery's dead, so you can't go to your nice paying job, you might just ask your spouse if he or she would take you to work. Many other countries, though, if somebody comes out of their house and they have to travel 15 to 20 miles to get to their job, they're doing it on a bicycle because they don't even have a car. Not 2 cars in the family, but even just 1 car. And in other cases, they might not even have a job to go to because they're living in an agricultural society and they're literally growing their own food in their yard. Now, of course, that means they're constantly working on their food and on their farm and whatever other jobs they can find. If I'm thirsty and I want a glass of water, I walk over to my refrigerator and I put my glass into the little receptacle. I push the button. And when I do that, I have fresh water that is filtered and it's cold and it goes right into my cup and it's ready to drink and it takes me all of 5 seconds. But some people don't even have fresh water standing by. Some people have to extract water from a nearby water source, maybe a lake or a river, and then they have to purify it in some way in order to make it ready to drink. Now, maybe they have a well where they can draw fresh water, but quite often they might have a well where they have to draw that water and then purify it still. In some parts of the world, those wells still require somebody drawing from a bucket, putting a bucket down into the water and drawing it up. But if they are blessed more than some others, they might have a hand pump that they can use to pump up and down for the pressure to bring that water up to them. But even then, they still have to purify that water in some way. There are entire ministries who focus their attention on simply helping people in some of these parts of the world to be able to have access regularly to fresh water. I read once about a missionary who was in a remote area, and when he first got there, he was handed a glass of water. And it was from one of the natives that was there, and this glass of water was brown and clearly unsanitary. And he was sitting there considering, because there was a group of people in front of him, that he was there to minister to. He was there to share the gospel. They'd already heard it, but he was coming there to be a permanent fixture among this group. And he was considering whether or not he should actually drink this water, knowing that this is what they were used to drinking all the time. He didn't want to offend them. He didn't want to tell them that he was better than them. But as he was trying to decide this, the chief took the glass of water from him and said, "We're just trying to make a point." And they handed him a bottle of water. Said, "This is what we're used to here. This is what we have." They were not really interested in hearing more about the religion. What they were interested in is having this guy help them to find a way to get regular access to fresh water so that they could survive, so that their family and their children could have fresh water on a regular basis. And this became the task of the missionary. In addition to sharing the gospel, in addition to spreading the message and being a spiritual leader, it didn't take away from the evangelism. It added to it, because now everybody, certainly while they were getting their spiritual needs filled, they were also getting their physical needs filled. And if we can help people with both, then we'll all be better off. Folks, if I want to take a shower, I simply go into the bathroom, turn a knob, and I have nice, hot, running water. I have shampoo and soap right there, and it's very, very easy. But there's still places in the world where people don't have running water. Not just to drink, but even to bathe. And while in your mind you might be picturing people going down into a river and bathing in the river, which still happens in a lot of places in the world, you have to remember that those places are often upstream from somewhere else where other people are going into that same water source to draw their drinking water that somebody else just bathed in. But that's the freshest water they can get downstream. Now, this is just but one example about water in which we in the United States are so fortunate. Maybe I should say we are so blessed. And even though everything I'm telling you is absolutely true, there's still probably somebody, whether in here or online or somewhere, that may not believe it because you simply haven't seen it for yourself. Because we are so used to what we have that we don't even realize how blessed we are. But how often do we hear about it? We were talking about it a little bit ago, just this morning. How often do we hear about people that are coming from other countries into the United States who are going through treacherous traveling conditions, who are dealing with cartels who are known to be very, very dangerous, just so that they can come to the United States, knowing that they're breaking the law while they're doing that. But they're still much better off than where they came from in many of those cases. Now, I fully recognize that amongst the many, many people who are entering the United States through the southern border right now, there are most likely people who are coming into our country for nefarious reasons. There are most likely people who are coming here with the express intent of doing harm to the United States. I absolutely believe, based on my background, that there are people coming through the southern border who are here to set up secret cells or secret terrorist organizations or maybe military fighting organizations, and they're simply waiting for a command to attack. I believe that is happening. There are many people, however, who are also legitimately trying to escape from very dangerous areas. They're trying to escape from areas where it's difficult just to get fresh drinking water on a regular basis. I have a very good friend who is married to a woman from Mexico. Now, she came to the United States legally many, many years ago, and she went to school. She's now an American citizen. She went to school, and she now is working in a pretty good, well-paying, white-collar job. But she grew up in a home in Mexico, literally, that had no running water. They had no indoor bathrooms. They literally had dirt floors. And they cooked over an open fire outside when it was nice weather and over a wood-burning stove inside when it wasn't. She still goes back on occasion to visit her parents who still live in those conditions. Folks, we are very blessed. But there's another side of this too. In 2022, there were 1,420 murders in Juarez, Mexico. There were 61 murders in El Paso, Texas, which is literally just yards away. Now, if you want to drive from El Paso to Juarez, it's about a 2-mile trip in the car. But if you want to walk, it's literally 50 yards across the bridge. Folks, that's half of a football field. And a recent news article says that the crime rate has significantly increased in El Paso in 2023. Homicides have doubled, auto theft has increased 37%, and robberies have increased 32%. So a lot of people coming that are not here just because they're seeking a better life. I get that. Clearly, everybody coming across the border illegally is not trying to find that better life or escape persecution or come to a place where they can have running water. Some are violent criminals who are coming here to prey on people, and that's P-R-E-Y, not P-R-A-Y. Not pray for people, they're preying on people. That's their intent. So how do we as Christians then respond to this issue, to this challenge? Well, the first thing we have to remember is that everything we do, we need to make sure that we are representing Jesus Christ in our actions and our thoughts. And it's okay to get upset about things. It's okay to get upset about what's going on at the border right now. But when we get upset, we need to make sure that we are also responding in a righteous way. We cannot simply have a knee-jerk reaction and be angry at every immigrant who comes across the border, whether they're coming across legally or illegally, because some of them are doing what they're doing just in order to have fresh running water, even though they know they're breaking the law by doing so. If you were to place yourself in that position, would you be willing to break the law to enter a country illegally if you didn't even have fresh water at home? If you put yourself in that position, maybe you would. Please know that I am absolutely not condoning breaking the law. I am not condoning entering the United States illegally. But I'm also certainly not condoning the response that we've had as a United States. And while we can sit here and say, well, I don't agree with what the government is doing, the government is the United States. It's the government of the people, by the people, for the people. And so what the United States government is doing, we are part of. Because we are the ones, as a people, who've put the ones making those decisions in power. Now, maybe I should say I'm not in favor of the response that our government is doing, or maybe I should say I'm not in favor of the intentional invitations by our government for people to cross into this country illegally. And while some people might say, well, the U.S. government is not inviting people to come into the country, we certainly are indirectly inviting people to illegally enter the country, to come here for a better life, and to give them all of these benefits that they can't receive in their own country, and to never say, you have to go back. We're just going to release you here. It does hurt us in many ways. In 2021, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said, if we use the minimum estimated cost for services that Texas provides to unlawfully present and undocumented aliens, taxpayers are shelling out an estimated, this is just in Texas, the minimum threshold, $855 million per year. That was in 2021. It's gone up significantly since then. Some examples include Texans pay between $579 million and $717 million each year for public hospital districts to provide uncompensated care for illegal aliens. Texans paid $152 million to house illegal criminal aliens for just 1 year. Texans pay between $62 million and $90 million to include illegal aliens in the state emergency Medicaid program. Texans paid more than $1 million for the family violence program to provide services to illegal aliens in 1 year. Texans pay between $30 million and $38 million per year on prenatal coverage for illegal aliens through the Children's Health Insurance Program. And Texans pay between $31 million and $63 million to educate unaccompanied alien children each year. It's a lot of money. Clearly, there is a negative financial impact with the current state of affairs. But we have to recognize that much of what we hear and much of what we see on the news is about politics, and it is about control. Now, generally speaking, when I talk to people, the blame is placed on the immigrants. That's where the focus is. We talk about these immigrants who are entering the country illegally. But is that the right thing to do? Is that the right place for the blame to be? Because they are literally being invited into the country. They are literally being promised a better life. They're being promised benefits. They're being welcomed with open arms. So the problem really isn't with the people who are entering the country illegally, at least not the bigger problem, and at least not most of them. Some of them are clearly criminals and terrorists, but even they are being invited into the country. The Statue of Liberty was a gift from the country of France to the United States. And it has stood at what was considered the legal entry point into the United States since 1886. And the inscription at the base of the statue is a poem written by Emma Lazarus, which says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Now, according to vocabulary.com, tempest-tossed means to be pounded or hit by storms or adversities repeatedly. And the golden door is representative of the opening for anybody to come to the United States and the golden opportunities that await within. Friends, we've been inviting people into this country for a long time. The United States has been known as the land of opportunity for a long time. The problem is the fact that we have leaders in this country who are giving invitations for people to come illegally and then supporting them as they do it. The answer to that is not to blame the ones entering the country illegally. The answer to that is to find the solution where we need immigration reform in some way, shape, or form. And maybe that's just enforcing the laws we have on the books. I don't know. I don't know enough about that. What I do know is whatever the current system is right now and the way it's being enforced or the way it's being executed is not working. I don't know exactly what it looks like. But I don't think that just giving blanket citizenship to everybody who comes here illegally is the answer either. They did break the law. But again, they were literally invited to do so, and we have to consider that. We have to remember that this is a political game. It's about power and it's about control. But as Christians, we have to think about how Jesus would respond to this. And the first thing that he would do is make sure that the people who are affected are being taken care of. That's not just the people who live here in the United States. That's the people who are coming into the United States as well. There's both sides of the equation. Both need to be taken care of. We need to make sure that they're not negatively impacted any more than they already are. We have to remember that as representatives of Jesus, if that's what he would do, we have to do the same thing. Now, we can get upset about the fact that our tax dollars are being used to take care of people who are in the country illegally. But what we really have to do is we have to think about whether or not what's being done or what should be done makes sense. We can make sure that the money that is being spent on taking care of these illegal immigrants here is spent wisely and not frivolously, which means we need to be involved in the political process. We have to be. Too many Christians say, well, Christianity and politics should be separated, and therefore I'm not going to vote the way that the Bible says because I want to vote with whatever my own conscience says. Well, no. As Christians, we absolutely have to be involved in the political process. And we have to be inputting our votes in the way that Jesus would have us vote. And he's made it very clear on some of these issues. The Bible's very clear on how we should respond. It's okay to want to close the borders, and personally, I think we should. But we need to get a handle on what's already here. There's already a problem. We have to address the problem. We have to remember that it's a political game that's being played. And we have to make sure that these people who are here, all of whom are created in the image of God, do not become more victimized than many of them already are. The political maneuvering, the political lying is occurring, by the way, on both sides of the political spectrum. We can't say it's just one party or the other because I'm seeing lies from both. On the one side, we hear that illegal immigrants are unskilled and will live off government welfare if they're allowed to stay here, off taxpayer dollars. But then on the other hand, we hear that these people, if they're allowed to stay, will take the jobs of American workers. Well, which is it? It can't be both. One cancels out the others. Is it possible that some may take the jobs of American workers? Absolutely. Is it possible that maybe they're taking jobs that most American workers won't do? Well, I know I see that. Or maybe they will take some of the jobs because they're better qualified than many of our people that we have here right now. We see some of that too. If either of those is true, maybe some of that would be good for the country. I don't know. If the reason why so many of them are unable to work right now, though, is because they're here illegally, maybe we should find a way for them to be able to work legally. maybe that would be beneficial so that there can be a living opportunity for these individuals. I don't know the answers to these questions, but does it make sense to take somebody and send them back to an area where they have no running water, where they have dirt floors, where there literally are people being killed all over the place and they're only trying to escape that type of dangerous area? I'm not saying I have the answer. I don't know the answer. What I do know is that what's happening right now is not working. And we've got to make sure that as Christians, we are involved in the political process so that we are placing what the biblical perspective is, which is love first. And it doesn't mean that we can't close the borders, because we can. It doesn't mean that we can't make sure we have a handle on the financial aspects of what's going on right now, because we can. All of that is important. But what I do know is this: as Christians, we have a responsibility to love others, no matter what, even our enemies. Matthew 5:44 tells us that. And quite frankly, at least the vast majority of even the illegal immigrants that are coming into this country, they're not our enemies. Some of them are, I have no doubt. But the vast majority of them are not our enemies. So what then would Jesus do? He would make sure that whatever position we take, whatever actions we take, are both loving and just. If they are a stranger, we don't invite them in, or they're hungry, we don't feed them, or they're thirsty, we don't give them something to drink, or they need clothes and we don't clothe them. If we turn our backs on these people who need these things, Jesus specifically told us it is just like we are turning our backs on him. He said it himself. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did not do for the least of them, you did not do for me. Jesus would absolutely be loving in his response towards the people who are here. But he would also be just. We have laws. And people who are entering this country illegally are breaking the law. So first, we need to act in love and make sure the necessities are being taken care of. We have to act in love. But we also need to enforce the law. We have both sides of that. Maybe we need to reform this law in a way that is just and loving. Exodus 22:21 tells us, do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner. Leviticus 19:34 says the foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself. Now you could argue that this is referencing only those who are in a legal status. But is it? Or does it really refer to everybody who is simply created in the image of God? So we as Christians, as followers of Jesus Christ, have to always respond and act in love, but also with justice. And right now we have people on both sides of the spectrum. Some over here saying, well, we have to just love and give them everything that they need, but there's no repercussions for entering the country illegally. There's no repercussions for the people in charge, the politicians who are making that happen. And there needs to be, because we have to have both love and justice. Because that's what Jesus would do. Romans 13:1-10 tells us, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but only for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear from the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid. For rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. This is why you pay taxes. For the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. Let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and whatever other command there may be are summed up in this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. So while we have to respond in love, we also have to be subject to the governing authorities. And the governing authorities doesn't necessarily mean the political people in power, but it does mean the Constitution and it does mean the laws of this land. So everyone who enters the country is subject to that. Everybody who enters, whether legal or illegally, is subject to that law. Every politician who is violating that law is still subject to that law, and that must be addressed. The penalties are harsh if those penalties are in place, and they should be. But for those people who entered this country illegally, the penalties are harsh. But does it make a difference when they are invited, literally, by the leaders of our country to come? And should we then place the blame on these illegal immigrants? Or do we respond in love to them and make sure their needs are taken care of and make sure that we are using the political process, that's submitting to the governing authorities, our political processes in the law, and we use our political process to fix that issue, to fix that problem, which means as Christians, you have to vote. You have to go to the voting box. 1 Peter 2, 13 and 14 says, submit yourself for the Lord's sake to every human authority, whether to the emperor as the supreme authority or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. We're not talking about submitting to the people. We're talking about submitting to the law. And we need to hold everybody accountable. As Christians, we have to vote in a manner that would represent Jesus. We have to vote in the same way Jesus would vote. So what would that be? In a manner that ensures everybody who needs to be loved is loved and receives the care that they need, while at the same time submitting to the established political process to making sure that the law is followed. That may mean voting for immigration reform. That may mean simply ensuring that whoever is in political power is simply enforcing the laws on the books. Because we have laws there for a reason. We have laws that worked for a long, long time. And maybe all we need to do is go back and look at what the book said 30 to 50 years ago and say this worked, but we need to enforce it. But meanwhile, we still have a bunch of people who are here right now that need to be addressed. We have to do this at the same time while making sure that the people who are caught in the middle, whether through their own fault or not, are loved and their needs are taken care of. James 2, 15 to 16 says, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes and daily food, and if one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if not accompanied by action, is dead. And 2 Thessalonians 3:10 tells us that if someone is not willing to work, then they shall not eat. Now that opens up the discussion for our welfare system as well, but it also directly applies to the illegal immigrants in our country. Unfortunately, the process right now, it doesn't work because we have a lot of people that are coming in here, but they're not legally allowed to make a wage, legally allowed. So we have to use our tax dollars to feed them and to clothe them. Shelter, medical care, all of these things, the tax dollars are paying for that. How do we fix this problem? I don't know. I don't have an answer. We have a lot to fix, though. What we can't do is turn a blind eye to it. And what we can't do is continue to blame the illegal immigrants just because they're entering the country illegally. Because we have to take the perspective of where they're coming from. We need to place that blame squarely on whom it deserves to fall. And that's the leaders who are inviting them into the country and promising them all these benefits. We have to use the established political process to place governing authorities who are willing to enforce the law and adhere to the law, while at the same time continuing to love and care for the people who need it, regardless of the circumstances. Again, I don't have the answers, but I do know that what Jesus has already made clear is that we are to welcome strangers into our land. We are to provide for their needs. We are to follow the governing authorities, and we are to follow the laws. We are to be loving and just. We have a legal process to enter the country. We need to be using it, and we're not. But we also have people that need to be taken care of that are already here. We cannot just be loving and continue to provide for their needs all the time without enforcing the law. Because by doing so, that will break financially this country. We cannot afford to do it. It could lead to the literal destruction of the American way of life. But we also cannot just be just without the love and say, well, you broke the law, so you're going back to where you came from, because that doesn't really work either. We can't just simply turn people away, the ones who are already here, the ones who were invited to come here. We can't just send them back. That doesn't really work. Not while they need food and shelter. Now, that doesn't mean we can't provide their needs and set up a way for them to go back. I don't know. But what we do need is a solution that has both justice and love, not just one or the other. And this is a huge political hot button right now. We see it on the news. It's a big deal right now. So the real question is, are we sitting back regularly just talking about it amongst ourselves and getting angry about it? Or are we actually doing something about it? Are we actually going and making sure that not only are we placing our votes where they need to be, but we're making sure that others are as well, with the intent on being both just and loving? We have to have both. Let's pray. Father God, we have a lot of issues going on in the country right now, and this is but just one of them. We ask that you give us the wisdom on how to deal with such circumstances so that we can deal with them in the way that you would have us deal with them, with both love and justice. We ask that you give us the wisdom to how to share that with other people so that they are also going and using the established political processes to ensure that our laws are being enforced, but while at the same time, that's the just part, while at the same time giving the love that's needed. The answer is difficult, but we know that you know the answer. We ask that you share that with us. Give us the wisdom to be able to make those decisions and to be able to put the right people into the governing authoritative positions that can do the right thing in your eyes. What takes care of the people who need to be taken care of, while at the same time making sure that the laws are being enforced or that the right laws are being put into place. Because this world is your world. And everybody in this world is created in your image. Sometimes we forget that when we take a hard stance on either side of the position. Allow us to see through your eyes. Give us the vision so that we can respond in the way you would have us respond. All this we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.